Hello, my name is Noah Drake, and I will be discussing the history of Title IX and its impact on interscholastic and intercollegiate sports. So what is Title IX? Title IX is a piece of legislation that, quote, prohibits sex discrimination in any educational program or activity receiving any type of federal financial aid. That quote comes directly from the Women's Sports Foundation website. So what does this quote mean? It means that publicly funded schools cannot discriminate on the basis of a student's sex. This is in regards to educational programs like honors classes or activities like the debate team. This came about in the 1970s when the women's rights movement was around its peak of constructing changes both in legal legislation and social norms. Title IX was enacted by Congress and signed into law by President Richard Nixon on June 23, 1972. This would not be the final product for Title IX, though. The man in the middle sent the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare to issue regulations that provide for reasonable provisions considering the nature of particular sports. This would be an incredibly influential addition, as it now includes a governing body to assess the validity of creating a non-discriminate athletic program. This amendment would later be approved by the man on the far right, President Gerald Ford. Ford signed the final version of Title IX on May 27, 1975, and sent it to Congress for review. On July 21, 1975, the bill is approved by Congress and is then inaugurated as an active piece of legislation. Colleges and high schools would then have 3 years to become compliant with Title IX. It's worth noting that the governing body, the NCAA, filed a lawsuit against the legality of Title IX in 1976. This case would be dismissed in 1978, just a few short months of the deadline for athletic departments of schools to be Title IX compliant. The National Collegiate Athletic Association has always been viewed in a negative light with other numerous accounts of not truly caring about student athletes, but this was one of the big examples. This showed that the NCAA did not originally want to create more equal opportunity athletic programs. As women's sports continues to gain traction in views and popularity, it all started with the NCAA's lawsuit being dismissed and allowing women's athletic programs to grow. In December 1979, the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare would issue their final policy interpretation of Title IX and introduce their famous three-prong test. This test is what makes an athletic department Title IX compliant or not. The first prong is proportionality. This prong regulates that an athletic department has proportional athletic programs for both male and female student athletes. For example, if a student has 1,000 males and 1,000 females, there needs to be a similar number of sex-divided teams. 5 male teams and 5 female teams, while not necessarily of the same sport, such as baseball and softball, would be adequate in achieving the first prong. The second prong is expansion, or growth. There has to be proof of more athletic programs being added to the underrepresented sex. An example of this would be if there were less females at a school, less athletic teams. The school would then add more female teams to show compliance with prong 2. The last prong is about meeting athlete accommodations. This means that a male basketball team cannot have a brand new weight room while the female basketball team has a weight room that has not been renovated in the past 40 or so years. They have to be comparable. If one team gets new uniforms, the equivalent opposite sex team needs to get new uniforms in a short amount of time as well. These are the 3 prongs that athletic departments are evaluated on. The athletic departments also only need to be proficient in one of these prongs to be Title IX compliant. They do not need to be compliant in all 3. This graph from 2012 illustrates the importance that Title IX has had on female athletes throughout the years. As you can see, before Title IX's origins in the early 1970s, there was a massive disparity in the participation of student athletes. There were very low female participants in high schools before Title IX, with a difference of around 3 million less athletes than their male counterparts. Female athlete participation has steadily increased throughout the years and is lessening the gap between female and male athlete numbers. All of this is largely possibly due to the efforts of Title IX legislation. The impact of Title IX on interscholastic and intercollegiate sports cannot be overlooked. Without it, we may have missed out on great athletes like Caitlin Clark of Iowa University. Certain athletic programs never would have been created, and there would be less jobs in opposite sport world. All of this started almost 50 years ago, back in 1972. Here are my references, and thank you for your time.